Wow, Star Trek Picard Season 3, another incredible episode. This time, the focus on our beloved Johnathan Frakes, Captain Riker.
This is the end, my friend.
Pop Tot, what did you think of this really good episode?
This is an interesting episode. I really, really, really like this episode. It's got, and I noticed there's like themes, like this is probably the most quotable episode that's been out there.
I think we should boldly get the hell out of here.
It's the most throwback to certain elements of science fiction. And, you know, the episode basically leaves off from the last one where the Titan's falling to its doom. But the episode actually starts out as a flashback to Guinan's modern day TGI Fridays.
Yeah, 10 forward.
And the cadets are interrupting a retired Picard and asking him stories. And there's a great reference to, he's talking about the Hirogen hunting him down, which is obviously a reference that we didn't get to see, but
I've always wanted to ask you something about your encounter with the Hirogen.
Another obvious Star Trek dilemma. They're falling to their doom, and Riker's trying to figure out what to do. And this is funny to me. And another science fiction shout out is Riker's telling him to divert everything to life support, and goes on basically what I call the Spaceballs Rant. Like,
What about weapons, Murrah?
fasten all the seatbelts, close all the shops in the mall.
Close down the circuits. Evacuate the zoo. Self-destruct mechanism has been activated. Abandon ship.
Cancel the 3-ring circus, secure all the animals in the zoo.
Engineering sustained critical damage during the attack.
Massive loss of power. We're down to 9%.
Or the impulse reactors.
We won't have the power to reverse the process.
But if we pull any more power from our engines, there will be zero chance we can fly out of here.
Kind of thing, and it just kind of cracked me up.
We're bleeding to death.
Which goes to one of my favorite parts of this series, this season specifically, and it's what I call a throwaway line. When you use a sentence, a throwaway line to explain something really dumb. And there's a moment in the episode where Jack Crusher and Picard go to the holodeck. And, you know, like you just said, Riker went through and said, all right, we need power from the shields, the weapons. We don't even need to breathe. Nobody can take a shit. Shut everything down.
Hold power from other systems.
But the holodeck still works. And Picard's like, well, you know, people get sad, and before they die, they go on the holodeck. And I'm like, that's a little silly.
Given the state of the ship, the holodeck's still open.
Well, it relies on a small, independent power cell.
Yeah, he actually says that there's a small power source and they leave it on when people need it in desperate times.
It's a little Duracell bunny that's just pumping.
For this very reason, so that in times of distress, it can be a kind of sanctuary.
Jack and Picard getting a moment to reconnect in the holodeck, and there's other people that join them because Riker tells him, says, hey, you know, enjoy these last few moments getting to know your son.
And if I were you, I'd take the next few hours to get to know your son.
The scene between Riker and Picard, which we talked about in the last episode and actually made a huge wave on the internet, was a lot of people were like, that's not Riker.
Remove yourself from the bridge.
And you and I went back and forth and said, actually, it kind of was. We already saw that in All Good Things.
No, Will, we can't. We have to save humanity.
Engage cloak.
And people were like, is he a changeling and all that? And then we see Riker meet with Picard in an incredible scene.
Yeah, the Riker and Picard scene, the first deep dive was basically Riker explaining the day they buried his son.
Yep.
And talking about the darkness of the hole that his coffin was going into. And
it was like infinite emptiness.
They've been everywhere, but that was the darkest he've ever felt. And because Deanna feels everything, that's where it created the divide between him and Deanna, because she couldn't feel anything from Riker anymore. Like he was dead inside.
But she couldn't live with me feeling nothing.
Terry has stated that he's not very religious, and I felt that come out a little bit in what Riker was stating, that he said that we've been everywhere in the galaxy and there's no sign that there's something after.
And yet there's nothing that proved to me that there is anything after.
And the way he said it was I lost that hope that I'll be able to see my son again. And it was like really broken. And you see this just dad that, you know, is in pain.
But she couldn't live with me feeling nothing. And neither could I.
And we see that again in the later part of the episode, and something that you and I referenced in the last episode, is Riker said, hey, I screwed up.
You were right before.
I'm making mistakes. I know it. You know, he says to Deanna, I ran away because I didn't know what to do.
That's on me. And I'm sorry.
So Seven is out and about looking for this changeling. Shaw gave her some advice to look for a bucket. This is, to me, is another shout out flashback to
Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country.
Second star to the right. And straight on till morning.
They were looking for the saboteur's boots,
right?
The assassin's boots. So she's going around ransacking the dude's apartment.
Where's it go?
There's that whole side plot with her. She encounters the changeling. He gets away. And like you said, I think in the last video, they've done really well with the new science, you know, the new CGI effects of when they turn into goo. Again, there's a lot of good quotes in here. Shaw says to Seven when she walks in the door, he's like, bang up job your heroes are doing with my ship.
Bang up job your heroes are doing with my ship.
There's a lot of great quotes in this episode.
Yeah. Shaw, he's, can we talk officially? No.
Can we talk?
Officially, no.
Unofficially?
No.
He's just such an asshole. Seven has no idea about changelings, which I feel like her time in the Borg, she would. I digress. But she's going with Shaw about what they are, and Shaw basically says they act out of character to the character you know.
Right, that's when she calls him a dick.
Make a great captain one day. Which is something I totally would say.
If you were a changeling and not just a dick.
He's just sitting there in his cabin alone. He says, whatever, just by himself, right?
Yep.
Whatever.
The other thing, which is very important, it's a very important plot to this episode, is Beverly's tracking these energy waves.
3, 2, 1.
We find out that, again, like we had kind of hinted around the last video, that this isn't a nebula, it's a living organism, and what they're feeling, those waves are contractions. And so the gang comes up with this really neat idea to, in true Star Trek fashion, do this, jerry rig this, and we'll ride the wave out. Soon to be changing nebula.
Right. It was a problem, and the crew said, hey, we are the smartest minds. Let's put our minds together and solve the problem. And that was really nice to see, because that is Star Trek to a T. That made me super excited, because the last episode ended so doom and gloom. The Titan was falling. Riker was broken and pissed off at Picard. And in this episode, by the end, you got everybody, hey, we need to work together. We have a few hours left. I wasn't a big fan that they seemed so defeated, because I feel like there had been a lot of other times where the situation felt a little worse. But I digress. That's a huge nitpick.
Stop it. Please stop.
In the meantime, we get a small scene with Vadic. She does a weird thing. She cuts her arm. This changeling communication thing comes out of her arm, and she talks to this guy, and she says that they're falling to their doom. He tells her to pursue, and she's like, I can't with all the weapons.
That's not possible with my ship's payload.
So he tells her, do it anyway. So she jettisons the weapons, and they go after him. That's basically one of the two scenes we get with him, with Vadic and the Shrike. Possibly my favorite scene in this entire episode. Picard is telling Jack the story of him and Jack Crusher, his namesake, getting stuck, and Shaw interrupts it. Shaw walks in and says, sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt family time.
This unbelievably emotional rant about how he basically met Picard for the first time, and it was Wolf 359, and of course he was an ensign or some young guy, and he was one of 10 chosen to go onto this lifeboat, right?
And a really painful story too.
And it was just a hugely emotionally painful story.
We waited for orders, and then finally some lieutenant comes down, and she just starts barfing.
As all things, kind of like with that scene with Sisko, when you first meet Sisko in the pilot of Deep Space Nine, Picard's wounded by it. Like, he there's nothing to defend it.
No, yeah.
Like, he's just completely, he's like, I'm done. He's like, I understand. He walks out, even though Jack tries to break up the story, but you could tell that it just haunts him still.
The reaction that he had to Sisko and Shaw was very similar, and Shaw had this whole story of how he was just and that becomes a joke, a dipshit from Chicago, which Picard ends up using in an endearing way later.
Despite the fact that you are indeed a dipshit from Chicago.
And it explains, and explains why Shaw had always kind of dug at Picard for being a Borg, why he didn't exactly respect Seven, which would probably change going forward after what happened with her and shooting the fake changeling LaForge, which was really great. But yeah, that Shaw, and then he's looking around and he's like,
at some point, asshole became substitute for charm.
Forgive me. At some point, asshole became a substitute for charm.
Like, I want to say perfectly Shaw, like we've known him for so long. Jack kind of felt bad too, and he's like, Shaw was like, they gave you a name, dude. You were special. And it's like, damn.
Locutus of Borg.
Yeah, that's how dangerous you were. They gave you a name, Locutus of Borg, and he kept saying it.
And they have a name for you. Locutus of Borg.
There's another great scene with most of the cast where Beverly, Jack, and Picard are trying to convince Captain Riker of this plan. Riker's not really going for it, of course, not at first.
At least we will have left something behind.
But then Beverly uses Deanna and her ability to trust people as a way to turn Riker around.
Deanna would say it's about trust.
You know, Picard's like, we've been here before, Will. And then Riker just comes up with this plan. Okay, we can do this with the nacelles, and he lightens up, and then you kind of see that greatness that the Next Generation crew has.
Beverly, she's like, this is what we're good at. And what we saw in the Next Generation was that anytime there was a problem, it was people trusting each other, and they had to basically go through that again. And Riker had kind of fallen into the Dark Knight Rises Bruce Wayne thing, where he didn't want to try because he didn't want to lose. He had already lost, and he didn't want to fight anymore. He just wanted to keep running.
I'm afraid that you want to. At least we will have left something behind.
And he was fine with, I'm not gonna, because he even says, well, I would rather have my chances here than face certain death.
I cannot choose certain death.
And it didn't feel like Riker at all. And I really like that you could see that switch change. And he's like, I have to trust these people that I've trusted before. It felt very Star Trek, and it got me super excited. The issue this season, it's not really an issue, more of a nitpick, because I don't really know what the hell it is or what it's gesturing, is the end of the episode. We see Jack Crusher once again have these visions, and I tried rewatching it to understand or hear, and they don't have closed captions when I was watching it. So
they're saying something.
Find me.
Yeah,
there's like several voices talking.
Right, and again, that's where that whole Pa Wraith thing comes in, is you have all these different people talking, which again reminds me of when they would talk to the Pa Wraiths or whatever, and you have all this red, and I don't know if Jack knows what's going on or if he's just like going through it. I don't know. It's one of the parts that kind of remain. I'm like, I don't know.
Again, I think there's probably a Pa Wraith scene in there, but I don't understand how that relates to Jack. Something I have all through my notes or watching that again. The music was just completely spot on.
Yeah.
There's a moment where Riker basically hands the helm over, or the captain's chair over to Picard again, and Picard's telling everybody what to do, and then you can hear the Next Generation theme music just gloriously playing in the background.
Yeah.
And then he does the finger engage thing.
Yep.
And I got a little like teary-eyed. Like, it was just such a great moment. It was so well crafted, that scene.
Engage.
Let me ask you something, and this is just something I was noting. The final flashback scene to Guinan's bar, Picard looks up and looks at Jack's character. You find out Jack's in the bar, and he was over listening basically Picard saying that all he ever needed was Starfleet.
Starfleet has been the only family I have ever needed.
Then it shows Jack and Picard looking at each other in that scene in present day. Do you think there was like a realization that Picard realized that was him in the bar?
See, my issue with that scene, and I was going to mention that too, I wasn't sure what the direction or tone was going for. And I know I just got done praising Frakes. Part of me was watching and I'm like, are they insinuating that Jack is a bad guy? And then Miss Tot was like, well, I think it's because Jack is once again seeing that Picard does hold this Starfleet family over his real family. And I'm like, okay, but the music and the way it's kind of shot.
You can't hide from the pain by being alone.
And then, like you said, does Picard realize that was actually Jack was there? I mean, it was a long time ago. I wasn't a big fan of that scene, and I don't know. What do you think?
Like you said, I don't know if that's what they were meaning to say. They really never they just like kind of looked at each other, and it was immediately is Picard just realizing like in this odd scene with no recollection that all of a sudden that Jack was in the bar, and that's why at that moment when he said that Jack doesn't want to be a part of his life. So
Pop Tot, what would you rate this episode?
I would give it an A because it really it's what Star Trek's about. There's just a lot of great teamwork. There's some space stuff, and they're trying to figure out this, that, and the other. It felt like a true Star Trek episode, and you got these space babies flying around, and that was kind of emotional. And the teamwork, even there's an asteroid field. It felt great, so I would give it an A for sure.
I'm same boat. I think this is probably my second favorite episode. The next episode's probably my first for reasons I never would have thought. But this episode, you said it's quotable.
And away from our new friends, the space babies.
Jack.
Space babies?
The tension is real. It feels real. It feels dire. I completely understood where Riker was coming from in a way that I didn't in the last episode, and I feel like it was all explained. I love what they did with Shaw and what they continue to do with Shaw, and I love that.
Oh, come on. You must have heard about the Battle of Wolf 359.
The whole dead naming kind of came back around.
Ensign LaForge always calls me Commander 7. Out of respect.
And, again, all the funny quote. There's so many good quotes. Not even that they're just funny, but they're just good in general.
I think we should boldly get the hell out of here.
And then to have this beautiful moment with these space squid things was really cool. And so I'm a firm A as well. Thank you guys, as usual, for watching these videos. Please leave likes and comments. I love going through your guys' comments. We are so excited to talk to you guys next week about that incredible episode. And as usual, thank you guys for supporting. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you guys.